So we have a couple of minutes before we begin. Let's use that time to become mindful of the sensation of breathing in our body and let that mindfulness of our breath cease any distracting thoughts to the past or to the future. And we'll begin in just a couple of minutes. Good morning, Anthony. Good to see you. Again, good morning, everyone. Today's going to be I believe it's the 6th talk on Karma and Rebirth. Probably going to be the 6th of 7, I think. We'll meditate first for 30 minutes, so find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. Let's just wait a moment and let whoever's coming up settle in. Good morning, Jen. So again, find your relaxed meditative posture. Gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And holding your back straight but not stiff, your ears aligned with your shoulders, nose aligned with your navel. Hold yourself very loosely, very gently, very lovingly. Allow yourselves to settle into this room. Settle onto your seats. Settle into your bodies. And settle into your minds. And take a moment to become aware of the sensation of breathing in your body. Just get a feel for what that's like. To be mindful of your breath in your body. And while remaining mindful of your breath in your body, notice that thoughts are flowing. We're conscious beings, thoughts should be flowing. The purpose of meditation is to not be distracted by your own thoughts. So when you find that you're caught up in your thinking again, simply acknowledge that and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. Relaxing your thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. And we'll meditate for 30 minutes with callbacks every 5 minutes. relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, your breathing. Relaxing thoughts, remaining mindful of your breathing. If a persistent thought or feeling arises, stay with it for a moment or two. Recognize it as impermanent and return your mindfulness to the sensation of breathing. And we'll meditate for 5 more minutes. take a moment to notice the quality of your mind. Be at peace with your mind. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. See you Tuesday, my friend. Good to see you. So today's talk, again, is the 6th on Karma and Rebirth. I think we'll conclude next week. Just a quick recap. Karma is the present moment unfolding of past intention actions, moderated or influenced by the present level of our mindfulness. Whatever we're holding in mind in this moment is going to determine the experience of the further unfoldment of our karma, the further unfolding of our life. And what that points to is the potential that each moment holds to incline our minds towards awakening or to continue a life rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. The Buddha related karma directly to Four Noble Truths. Mentioning that is, there's a lot of modern Buddhism discounts or diminishes the importance of understanding karma as saying that it's an archaic teaching that is not even applicable to our time, and that the Buddha during his lifetime only taught it to be relevant to to the use of karma during his time, and that's only partly true. The Buddha taught karma not to be relevant to the understanding, but to actually point out the significant differences between the proper use of karma and the way it was normally applied, which is exactly what happens when you say karma was archaic and it's not a useful teaching. It really, understanding karma is understanding the entire Buddha's teaching. The Buddha taught that karma should be understood. He placed that much importance on it, which is exactly the same thing that he said about the First Noble Truth, that dukkha should be understood. He said that the cause of karma should be understood and abandoned, which is exactly how he relates to the Second Noble Truth. He said that the experience of karma should be brought to an end, Third Noble Truth. And he said that the path leading to the cessation of karma is the Eightfold Path, which is the same path leading to the cessation of dukkha. So the importance of understanding karma can't be overstated. It's really, again, it's the entire Buddhist teaching. Today we begin looking at how karma relates to the three marks of existence: anicca, anatta, and resulting dukkha. Anicca is impermanence. Anatta is the not self characteristic, meaning the views that we hold of ourselves that are rooted in ignorance. They're not a self, let go of those views. But because we don't yet understand that, at least some of us, the resulting experience of our life is dukkha. It's a general unsatisfactoriness because we don't understand the interplay between a wrong view of self and the impermanent nature that we all live in. That's where we'll get to today. And that leads directly to, and back to the First Noble Truth of dukkha, and then it leads to what we'll conclude with probably next week. I don't think we'll get to it this week, the true meaning of rebirth and how that applies. So I'll read from the article. Just a little bit. The three defining characteristics of the phenomenal world are anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Within the environment of impermanence, dukkha arises. Dukkha arises due to clinging, craving, and aversion. Clinging arises from a misunderstanding of the nature of self. What arises as a self, shown to be anatta, not a self, it's just wrong views, is an impermanent combination of the factors known as the five clinging aggregates. The five clinging aggregates are simply the, what's not going on with my Kindle today? The five clinging aggregates are simply the description of the personal experience of dukkha. And I'm not going to go into that this morning, but there's a lot on the website, and I talk about that often. These aggregates are described as clinging due to the nature of self, to cling to thoughts, views, and ideas and objects that further define and describe a self. It is craving and clinging rooted in ignorance that establishes a self and creates karma and the cycles of birth. Anatta, or not self, refers to the impermanent nature of the formation of a self that is subject to stress, disappointment, and confusion. The Buddha never taught that there is a self or that there is not a self. He avoided the issue, as a focus on metaphysical questions would be a distraction from his stated purpose to bring an understanding of dukkha and a cessation to dukkha, nothing more. The Buddha taught that what is commonly believed to be a self is not founded in right view. It is a view of self conditioned by ignorance that's to be abandoned if confusion and suffering is to end. So this does relate directly to karma. The Buddha, the subject of a permanent self or an experience where there was no such thing of a self, meaning nothingness, are both extreme views that the Buddha avoided and abandoned as not getting to the goal. That's not to say that he didn't say there's no such thing as a permanent self. He did. But he said that that question of that goes to the extreme of that, well, if there's no such thing as a permanent self, then there's no self. That's another extreme view that has been adopted even during the Buddhist time, but adopted by some modern Buddhist schools, that the self is nothing and it's just this big void and an experience of nothingness. And that's not what the Buddha is talking about. He's talking specifically to what's occurring to a human being in the course of their life. It's not a metaphysical question at all. That relates to the views of self, and that's anatta. What he's saying is anatta is wrong views of a self rooted in ignorance. Those selves do not constitute a self. Let go of the views. That's really the only way that the Buddha addressed the idea of self. There's no metaphysical application there at all, is there? And that relates directly to karma. The ongoing belief rooted in ignorance of a self is the unfolding of karma. You say that it's the origination of karma. Craving for that wrong view of self to continue is an aspect of the second noble truth that initiates suffering, and so it also initiates karma. Is that clear? Relatively so? Okay. As a distraction of dukkha is always present to a deluded mind, then an awakened mind is a mind free of karma and free of the karmic manifestation of rebirth. So before I get into rebirth, that the three marks of existence, anicca, anatta, dukkha, impermanence, the not self characteristic, and dukkha, the resulting unsatisfactory nature of life. Gaining insight into those three marks is the insight that the Buddha is hoping to develop, and I'm hoping to develop, through the Dhamma. The reason why I say that is we're not looking for an insight into every single thing that arises, which is another thing that's often taught, that any type of impermanent phenomena that comes up, we should meditate on, and we should try to gain insight into it. In fact, there's a whole school of Buddhism called the Insight School that, and I'm greatly simplifying what they're after, and I don't mean to do that, but a lot of their practice is gaining insight to whatever comes up during meditation. And that can just often lead to just more distraction. The Buddha taught that useful insight is into these three marks of existence so that we can recognize our own wrong views and bring karma to cessation. And anything outside of that, it can easily fall into distraction, because everything outside of that is all, we're looking at just impermanent objects, events, views, and ideas, and we can get very easily lost in the weeds. If we recognize that whatever is coming up, whatever we're experiencing is impermanent, practice restraint at that point of recognition, then we can bring karma to cessation and our contributions to dukkha. Is that clear? Okay. Once karma ceases, there will be no more births. And what I'm talking about specifically, what the Buddha is talking about, is not so much a future birth, but what we're giving birth to in each moment. Because if our mind is well concentrated and well framed in the refined mindfulness developed through the Eightfold Path, what we will give birth to is another moment that's inclining ourselves towards awakening. If we're lacking that understanding, ignorant of Four Noble Truths, we can only give birth to another moment that's rooted in that ignorance. So that's a key point, and that's clear. Pretty simple and direct, isn't it? What we're holding in mind is the most important thing. What we're holding in mind will determine our experience of life. That doesn't mean that if we hold in mind a pile of gold, the next moment we're going to have a pile of gold. What it will mean is likely we're going to be disappointed because the next moment won't have a pile of gold. Look at what caused that thought. It's a self-clinging, self-referential thought that I need a pile of gold to be happy. Again, it's a somewhat extreme example, but that's the difference between a mind well framed by the Eightfold Path and a mind still rooted in ignorance. Because a mind still rooted in ignorance will grasp on that idea that what I hold in mind will determine my experience and say, well, I want to have a pile of gold or something else. Rather than holding in mind, realizing the importance of holding in mind the principles that will develop a mind free of clinging and craving. Important point. And then that's the whole, I could stop right there, but I won't. But that's really the whole point about what we're giving birth to. Once karma ceases, there will be no more birth. Without karma to create the unfolding need for continued existence, rebirth ends. And that does relate to a future physical birth too, but that's almost unimportant as to what we're talking about today. The Buddha's understanding and teachings on rebirth differ greatly from the Brahmanism of the Buddhist time and differs greatly with many of the mystical Buddhist religions. The Dhamma also differs greatly from the Hindu and Hindu influence beliefs. Welcome back, Jen. Excuse me. The Dhamma also differs greatly from the Hindu and Hindu influence beliefs that would arise well after the Buddha's passing. The Buddha lived during the time that the Vedas were. The Vedas are the scripture that is a precursor to modern day Hindu. The Vedas and later the Upanishads would follow directly after and during the Buddha's lifetime, started becoming in favor. The Upanishads were actually a refutation of the Vedas that now have become part of the modern Hindu religion. The Buddha studied those, obviously, from two of the famous teachers of that time, excuse me, and rejected both of them, not because they were useless, that they weren't valid religions. They just weren't useful in developing the understanding that the Buddha sought and taught. Alara Kalama taught that the highest goal of his interpretation of the Vedas was achieving the state of nothingness. The Buddha achieved that and realized that's not a useful goal. That's just another impermanent mind state. And Uddaka Ramaputta taught the highest goal was achieving this mental quality of neither perception nor non-perception, kind of a non-dualistic view that has continued to this day. And the Buddha rejected that as simply an impermanent quality of mind that is just another distraction. And that's when he ultimately developed an understanding that he described as Four Noble Truths. Many religions, including some Buddhist religions, teach morals and ethics as a way of hopefully having ever more pleasurable future lives, but never abandoning conditioned thinking and continued eye-making. So just to explain that, because it's another key point, most religions teach morals and ethics and virtuous behavior, and it's important that we act in that way so that, and it's, again, not always taught this way, but mostly that if we act in a morally and ethical way, we won't be punished. But if we do, we will be punished in some way. There's also this idea that if we act in a certain way, we will get certain rewards, always when we die. The difference between that and what the Buddha taught is that the suffering that we create for ourselves and others is rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. And it's that thinking that is the hell that we're creating for ourselves. Even though we may be creating chaos in our outward life and for other people, the real suffering is occurring in our minds, and it's in our minds that the change has to take place, the recognition and the abandonment of wrong views. It's not simply just acting in a certain way. Because if we're taking that view that if I just act in a certain way, I'm good to go, we're ignoring ignorance. We're ignoring the underlying cause of hurtful behavior in the first place. And a conditioned mind will always fall back into that type of craving and clinging motivated behavior. It may not be terribly egregious acts. You know, none of us, I don't think, are murderers, or think of the extreme behaviors that are rooted in deluded views. None of us act that way. And I should say that if any of us ever acted that way, that's the reason. But it's the more subtle aspects that cause ongoing unsatisfactory experiences, ongoing dukkha. And even an ongoing subtle competitiveness and aggressiveness that pervades society. You know, so we're all not out there stepping on each other's toes to reach the top, but at a very subtle level, we're continuing an experience, karma, rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, that is an ongoing experience of stress, of disappointment. And so if we just say, well, okay, I'm going to act in the perfect way, I'm going to follow the 10 Commandments, but we don't address the underlying cause of that hurtful behavior, we'll never develop a calm and peaceful mind. And we might live very wonderful and virtuous lives, underlying tension there. There'll always be an underlying level of stress, simply because we're that motivation to live a good life is rooted in ultimately a wrong view of what constitutes a self. The Buddhist teachings takes us beyond just the actions to the ultimate cause of the actions. And that relates to karma. Karma means action. So we're getting at the root cause of why we create karma in the first place, why we would give birth to another moment rooted in ignorance. Sorry, I lost my place. Let me just read half that last sentence. But never abandoning the conditioned thinking and continued eye-making. This is continued clinging to an idea of an ego self, and is specifically what the Buddha was referring to when he stated, this was the third knowledge I attained in the third. The Buddha is describing his awakening. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just the closing part of that. The Buddha's words, this was the third knowledge I attained in the third watch of the night. Ignorance was destroyed. Ignorance, Four Noble Truths. Knowledge arose, and darkness was destroyed. Light arose, as happens in one who is heedful, ardent, and resolute. The Buddha is again referring to himself, not in any type of godlike way. This will happen to anyone who is ardent and resolute in their practice. Birth is ended, the integrated life fulfilled. That's often, the integrated is often written as the holy life. But that has too many religious connotations for me to leave it at that. What the Buddha is referring to is a life that is well integrated into the Eightfold Path. The integrated life has been lived, which is exactly what he's referring to. The translation to holy is from a Pali word that I can't remember right now. But it really relates better to an integrated life than a holy life in a religious sense. If you want to look at holy as a holistic life, though, it does relate directly to the Eightfold Path. Sorry. The integrated life fulfilled, the task is done. There is nothing further for this world, and that directly leads to the idea of birth. There's nothing left of anatta, of a self-rooted in wrong view, to give birth to another moment rooted into that wrong view that would continue that view of self in the world, that personal experience of suffering. Is that clear? You could say that at this point, the five clinging aggregates no longer are clinging together. They're no longer clung together as an identity of a self. We're no longer defining ourselves simply by the body is permanent, by whatever feelings I'm feeling in this moment, by any perceptions that are driven by a wrong view, or any ongoing consciousness rooted in that wrong view. All of those elements are still present as an individual reference point to what's occurring in life, but we're no longer creating an identity by those reference points. That's an important point. It might be a little bit. Is that somewhat clear?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I don't know if I can. Yeah, the 5 clinging aggregates, let me say it this way. The 5 clinging aggregates are form, feeling, perceptions, mental fabrications, and ongoing consciousness. Now remember, those 5 elements are experience rooted in ignorance initially. So now as an awakened human being, karma has ended. I'm no longer giving birth to a moment that is experienced by clinging those aggregates together. In other words, I no longer perceive myself as a permanent physical self. I no longer define my experience by what I'm feeling right now. I no longer create perceptions and mental fabrications rooted in the ignorance of 4 noble truths. And that doesn't feed this ongoing consciousness anymore. So what I'm experiencing right now, even though from pre-awakening to post-awakening, the outward appearance is exactly the same. The Buddha was the same human being upon his awakening as he was the 35 years prior to that. And even the outward experience of life doesn't change, but our perception of it changes. So because we're no longer defining ourselves by those 5 aggregates, they are now disparate aggregates that simply form the point of reference who we are. Each moment is a moment of profound mindfulness in its experience simply as it is, without any self-referential views, without seeing ourselves in anything that's occurring, without defining a preference based on likes and dislikes and craving and aversion. It's simply what's occurring. Is that clear? Did I help clarify it? Did I clarify for everyone? Really? Because the 5 clinging aggregates are a tough one, and relating it to karma can be, mostly because these are unfamiliar terms that we're using. But it's simply describing what's occurring in our life. And it's describing it in a way that we can do something about it. We can gain control over it. We can practice restraint when we start recognizing the ongoing process of I-making, which is the same as saying the ongoing process of karma unfolding. You know, it's I-making that provides the momentum for karma. At that point of restraint, when we recognize what we're doing, so let me put another qualifier on that. Recognizing what we're doing is developing mindfulness as opposed to living our life mindlessly, right? As we gain that deep and profound level of mindfulness framed by the Eightfold Path, the Buddha just talked about it, integrated, a life well integrated with the Eightfold Path. We end I-making and end the unfolding of karma, and this speaks directly to what we're giving birth to in this moment. And that's why I probably said it at least once each class about karma. Karma points to the importance of understanding the potential in each moment. Each moment holds the potential to what we're going to give birth to. And just take that statement out of everything that I've said so far. Karma holds the potential for what we're going to give birth to in this moment. That's a true statement. Forget everything about the Dhamma. It's a true statement, isn't it? What's going on in our life right now holds a potential. Whatever we do is going to determine what we experience next, isn't it? If you still want to listen to this crazy old man, you'll sit here. If you don't, you'll get up and leave. That's karma unfolding, isn't it? It will determine your experience. As we integrate the Dhamma into our lives, then what we're holding in mind in relation to the Dhamma will determine what we're giving birth to in the next moment, won't it? It will determine how we experience the unfolding of the rest of our lives. That's karma. Karma is the present moment unfolding of our past intentional actions moderated by a present moment mindfulness, what we're holding in mind in this moment. So is that perfectly clear? Because that really is the whole enchilada. And that's the important thing. Let me just see where I am. Okay, I am going to end there. And I'll conclude this on New Birth next week. But that points to the significant importance of birth and rebirth. What am I giving birth to in this moment? Because if we attend to that, then what might happen to us after death is of absolutely no importance. And we can speculate about that. We can bring in other traditions and other teachings about, this religion teaches this and that. Even Buddhist religions disagree on what happens after death. The Buddha taught, he did not teach that there's no such thing post this physical life, but he taught it in a way to say that the most important thing is to take to the Dhamma like your hair's on fire. Awaken in this life, you don't have to worry about anything that occurs. And the possibility to awaken in this life is what the Buddha taught. Not something, in most Buddhist schools, it's taught that it takes endless lifetimes, eons and eons and eons to awaken. I remember when I first came across that, and I thought, I don't even know if I want to continue. I want something that works now. And it wasn't until I looked at what the Buddha actually taught that I realized that, yeah, he taught something for human beings to awaken in this lifetime, and with the possibility and the potential that is in this moment. And that's the importance of karma and rebirth. And I'll end the talk today. And I think we'll conclude next week. So a great series of talks. Thank you for listening. Any questions directly on today's talk, and then we'll go around the room. Okay. Jen, good to see you this morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I feel like it always just goes back to not being attached to an outcome.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get attached to an outcome, then you just get attached to an outcome without even realizing it. And then impermanence comes in and goes, oh, look, you were attached to the outcome. So you didn't get the outcome you wanted. And if you can recognize that it's not as, and then laugh at it, it's just not as, you're just not suffering. So, but it's good to hear it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Glad you're here. Yeah, getting attached to outcomes is the result of craving for something initially and then clinging to whatever that might be.
Right.
And it's always disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And because it's disappointing, it's always a distraction. The mind is never settled. So
Right.
It's great insight. Thank you. Tommy, good to see you this morning. How are you?
Good morning, everyone. I'm well, thanks. Happy to be here. I guess the conflict that I keep coming up against is the actor versus the reactor. In other words, everything that I perceive, everything that you're speaking of, is in the actor stage, being able to let go and take a position that I don't seem to be able to achieve in my life, which is the endless putting out of fires. I'm always going back to this, and not being able to move forward because I'm always dealing with what I consider life-changing problems, situations. So, it's my attempted piece to even be in the room, to start to consider something that might be based in serenity. But it's not the nature of my life. It's just not the nature of my life. And that's the struggle that I have to deal with.
Thank you for bringing it up, Tommy. That is the struggle. The Buddha described what you just described as there is dukkha, dukkha occurs, the first noble truth. And I mean, that is the problem. Mm-hmm. And so how do we deal with it? When the Buddha, when Buddha awakened, on the website, it's linked on the front page, is the Nagara Sutta. The Buddha describes awakening. Take a look at that. But in that sutta, the Buddha describes how he looked at the world. This is also in the Loka Sutta too. When he first awakened, he described it this way: the world is a flame. People are a flame. And he wasn't describing the world being on fire, but aflamed with the passions of competitiveness and aggressiveness rooted in wrong views. And that hasn't changed in 2,600 years. So development awakening doesn't mean that the outward world, that part of dukkha changes, but it does mean that we're able to develop a calm and peaceful mind that does not react to it anymore. But it also doesn't imply that there won't be fires to be put out, you know, but we'll do it in a more mindful way without losing our minds over it. We'll be able to maintain a mind of calm and equanimity throughout that whole process. But also remember that left a certain amount of the world behind in order to develop his awakening and maintain it. And that's a choice all of us have to make. Most people, as they start developing the Dhamma, tend to simplify their lives in certain ways and not be so engaged in the life as they were before. But even the Buddha was still engaged in the world. He didn't just leave the world behind and stay in the woods for the rest of his life. He left his whatever place he was once a day and walked into town and interacted with the town to get his bowl of food and clothes and whatever else he might need. Him and his monks and nuns traveled around northern India, interacting with people, teaching the Dhamma. He advised many of the kings and governors and other political leaders of his time, constantly, business leaders too. So he wasn't completely withdrawn from the world, but he had developed a balance in his life so that he could be involved in the fires of the world, you know, putting out the fires. Just a little bit of a side note. Everybody knows who Mother Teresa is, right? You've heard of her. Like most of you, like all of you, probably. I mean, I was always amazed by the stories of what Mother Teresa was able to do and how she lived her life. But I learned a great lesson when I first read a biography of her many, many years ago. Every day, for 6 hours every day, her and her nuns isolated themselves from where, I guess it was Calcutta, but she worked other places, isolated herself for 6 hours so that they could pray and meditate in preparation for the work that they did the rest of the time, which hit me with a significant understanding that she needed to take care of herself if she was going to be out there putting out the fires in the world that was around her. And we have to do the same thing. And there's nothing, we're going to conclude with Metta, and Lorna reminded me of something about Metta. And that's how that's taught. We first need to take care of ourselves. And the most loving, that's why I say the most loving thing I can do for myself and for everyone else around me, for all sentient beings, is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. Because then I'm in a much more qualified mind state in order to deal with what's going on around me. So you're in the right place. And thank you for bringing it up. Erica, welcome again. It's good to see you. Do you have anything to say to us this morning?
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here. I'm so glad you joined us again. Erica's joined us. She came all the way from Brazil for the last couple of nights. So thanks for bringing Erica, Tommy. Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you. Great to be here as always. A few weeks ago, I had signed up for a class of a very specific study that you don't come across very often in New York after work 2 nights a week. And was looking forward to it. And I took the first Thursday night classes for a couple of weeks. It was an introduction. It was very interesting. And then I took the Monday class, and I realized that it was pretty much a bait and switch kind of thing. The class wasn't really as genuine as it was presented. And it's a free class. You get what you pay for, obviously. But I came back from this past Monday, the class I went to, and I came home, and my wife said, "How was the class?" And I said, it's not for me. And she was like, "Oh, why not?" And I kind of explained to her a little bit, and she said, "Oh, I'm really sorry that it didn't work out. I know you were excited, looking forward to it." And I was like, "No, well, it's okay." And she was kind of surprised at my reaction, and I kind of stopped and thought about it, and I realized that I did not have an attachment to an outcome. I think that was exactly it, because I have a tendency to get attached to things. It might be like an only child syndrome or whatever, but I get part of something and I really tend to get gung-ho, sometimes too much, and then when it doesn't work out, I get really disappointed. And I went into this saying, geez, this is interesting. I felt kind of fortunate that I stumbled onto it, but I guess I didn't emotionally, psychologically, whatever, dive too far into it, that when it turned out not to be what I wanted, that I was crushed or anything. Yeah. I mean, crushed is too strong a word, but like really disappointed. I was disappointed, but I kind of also, I remember walking back, and it's on the east side of Manhattan, and the only way to get to it is a little over a mile walk back and forth. And I was like, well, at least I don't have to do this walk anymore in a rush. You know, I had to get there, you know, within 25 minutes. I was rushing out of work and everything. But yeah, it really felt kind of good not to feel that disappointment because something didn't work. It just didn't, and that's the way it was, and move on.
Wow. Thank you, Rich. That's such a great example of the Dhamma working. That Dukkha says there's going to be disappointments in life. We don't have to react to it, and that's it. That's how we experience it. Instead of getting all upset and whatever else might follow from that, it's just what occurred. It's a disappointing aspect of life. And if you look at the underlying, you said that it was a bait and switch. So there's an underlying competitiveness there for your dollar that motivated the whole thing. But again, that's not right or wrong. I mean, we wish that type of thing wasn't, but it's occurring from wrong views. Part of dukkha. And we're able to maintain a peaceful and calm mind because we understand what's occurring. Dukkha must be the first noble truth. Dukkha must be understood. Karma must be understood. We understand it, so it doesn't get to us anymore. Thank you for bringing it up. Really good examples of the Dhamma this morning. So let's see what Anthony has. Good morning, Anthony.
He has an allergy attack.
There is dukkha.
I just wanted to say to Tommy's point, I think most of us are living with an overwhelming feeling of dissatisfaction and distraction a lot. I don't think it's unique to Tommy.
No, it's definitely not.
And I think even if you drill down your circumstances, or you become part of a Buddhist monastery, and you have the peace that you think you so desire, you're going to have issues with the food and other people in the monastery because they have egos, even though they're Buddhists, and it's all going to creep in. So it's just a constant thing that we, as humans, experience. And I think so. Coming into meditation and a group, a Sangha like this, it's just so important to take those wellness breaks, as you pointed out. I look at karma a little like sort of how do you frame things. So if you put a positive, if you're putting a negative frame on things, it's going to influence your thoughts and your actions. I think, excuse me, it's probably preferable if you could put a positive frame on things, but not get attached to the positive parts of it, but to think positively, or at least to be able to accept what you're being confronted with and put that frame on it. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. How we perceive what's occurring and how we are either reacting or responding to it is going to determine our experience of any of it. And framing it from the view of the Eightfold Path, we see things clearly. So. Mary, good morning. Good to see you.
Good to be here. This was an excellent talk. I mean, you see so often in life something bad happening to someone, and instead of recognizing this was bad and it happened, they take it on personally. They think somebody did something on purpose. Well, even if they did do it on purpose, I mean, you need to realize it happened, then move on.
Yeah.
And taking this class has enabled me to do that to a great degree, instead of just reacting to everything. But you see so often people who are unhappy, are not holding any of this in mind, certainly. And are always looking for something that's going to harm them, and perceiving everything as something that's going to harm them.
Yeah.
Instead of just something that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that too. When you become preoccupied with the preservation of this ego self, it's a really tough place to live because there's always something that's going to affect it, and that can lead to minor to major psychosis. It's the only reason I'm thinking of Howard Hughes and how that poor man finished his life, just locked up away because he was so afraid of germs, protecting this self. Even on a more subtle level, that type of self-protection affects everything that happens to us in our life, every moment, unless we can recognize it, let it go, and get past it. people. Thank you, Mary. Good morning, Lorna.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm realizing more and more that it's all what happens between your ears. You know, that it's all in your thinking. And I kind of got that sort of a year ago, but even even that understanding has degrees of understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm really sort of understanding more and more that how we're thinking is how we perceive life, and it's all between your ears. You know, it's not phenomena, it's not this, it's not that, it's between your ears.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I've also been understanding that there's just no phenomena to make you happy. It just can't do.
Why?
It's all impermanent. It's you know, you have, going back to what Jen said, you have an expectation of phenomena, which therefore you look there for your happiness, and it's the and often it's not there, and if it is there, it's only temporary, and it's just on the, so that didn't work out. So you look for some more phenomena.
Yes.
You know, to
Sensation.
make you happy again, and then no. So I'm sort of thinking about that. That you know, there's no phenomena that's whether you eat it, you smoke it, whatever you do, it ain't gonna work. I was thinking that probably this relates a little bit more to what we've been talking about, Karma and Rebirth. Or you can almost, if you're watching a soccer match or a football match, and you were to take a survey of 500 people that were travelling to the match, and you could look in between their ears and see what they were thinking and what they were holding in mind. Before the game even started, you could see who was going to be happy and who was going to be sad. Because as the game unfolded, you would know who was going to be happy, who was going to be sad, who was going to be satisfied, who was going to be pleased. You know, because of what they're holding in mind before they go into the game. Before the game even kicked off or anything, you could have that insight who's going to, you know the story. So I thought that was funny. We're all so predictable, and anyway, I'm not sort of focusing on anything in my mind, but kicking a lot of ideas down ideas around like that, and just thinking about things.
Thank you. You're so right about impermanence. When the Buddha the very first teaching on the Four Noble Truths, Gandhana said, all conditioned things that arise are subject to cessation. He recognized the impermanence of all phenomena. And so why attach ourselves to anything? Especially, most importantly, why create identities over things that are impermanent? You're setting yourself up for disappointment, especially with the way you described it this morning. And you're certainly right that smoking anything is an exercise in impermanence. There's never enough.
I wanted to underline something that you said in the talk that also kind of relates to everything you were saying. That's I think helpful is removing yourself from whatever's happening and taking you out of what's happening out here. And I just have to give an example of like this week, and because I set up a lab, I'm a teacher, and I set up a lab, got my whole lab set up, took like 2 hours, like everybody had everything they needed on their lab benches. And I have a big classroom that has a lab in the back and a classroom in the front. And the day I was supposed to do the lab on the way to work, I hit a deer and my car was totaled and I didn't go to work. And it's okay, I have a very old car. The deer got up and ran away. I'm okay, the deer's okay. But I didn't get to do my lab, and when I came in the next day, the whole lab was like cleaned up and like destroyed, and the substitute didn't do the substitute plans. They tried to have the kids do the lab, which was, you know, I wasn't there. Was not there for any of that. None of that had anything to do with me or my life or anything that I was doing, and yet, whew, was I angry at that substitute for my room and messing up my lab and taking up my time and putting my students in danger. It was all just me inserting myself in what had happened rather than saying, oh, you know, putting in place. There were things that happened after the fact that, okay, maybe I need to put up signs that like nobody's allowed to be in the lab when I'm not there, and like skillful things, you know, to learn from what had happened, but not to like still be so enraged with this particular substitute is completely, you know, irrelevant. It's because I just made it about me, which I'm not beating myself up for. It's just what we do. We take on or insert ourselves into something that's occurred that had nothing to do with us, just because it affects us.
Wow, that's great insight in seeing the process and not trying to justify it.
Right.
To see what occurred there,
Right.
And because of that, because of the recognition, it may not occur in the future. But because of conditioned thinking, it may occur. But the recognition is the most important thing, and this is where that idea of reward and punishment can get in. You know, and really make it confusing. The important thing is to recognize the I making in it, so that you can bring it to cessation, so that you can end the karmic entanglement in that whole situation.
And be skillful.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? Yes.
One more thing. I've also been thinking and realized that the monkey mind that we have, this constant thinking, gives personalization to everything. You know, it just gives the ground for eye making to continue on in your mind all the time.
Yep. That
I've tried to stop it, I can't.
well, but you're doing the Dhamma practice is designed to do just that. It takes a well-concentrated mind to support the refined mindfulness of the Eightfold Path in order to do that. It works. So thank you for bringing that up. A few quick announcements. Our Dana dinner is Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, November 21st. There's info on the Cross River Meditation website about that, and I'll do some more announcements. Our Dana project for this year, but then ongoing, is going to be the Raritan Learning Cooperative, I think it's called now. I'll have more information about that. One of our Sangha members, Mary Beth, runs this alternative high school in Flemington, which is really remarkable what they're doing, and we're going to be getting more involved in that. Donna dinner, that. If any of you use the guided meditations on the website, they're all on one page, and they're thank you, Anthony. They graduated from 5.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. There's a 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute, and 45-minute guided meditation that you can use. And also there's 2 metta meditations, again, all on that one page. And there's instructions there. So, all right, let's finish with metta as we always do. And we're going to use a different version that I've been using, one that I used to use a lot. Thank you, Lorna, for the suggestion. So find your relaxed meditative posture and gently close your eyes and gently close your mouth. And metta means goodwill or loving kindness, and we first express that goodwill and loving kindness to ourselves and then to all sentient beings. So holding in mind the sensation of breathing in your body. May I be filled with love and kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May I be filled with love and kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May I be filled with love and kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. And now bring to mind those that you care deeply for, and generating those same feelings of deep love and compassion for the objects of our meditation. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful, at ease. May they be happy. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. And now bring to mind those you may be in conflict with, difficult relationships, and generating those same feelings of love and compassion for the objects of our meditation. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. And may they be happy. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be peaceful and at ease. May they be happy. May they be filled with love and kindness. May they be well. May they be peaceful and at ease. And may they be happy. And now bring to mind each other in this room this morning. And extend your awareness outside of this room, across our community, across our planet, across all creation, to include all sentient beings. And generating those same feelings of deep love and compassion for all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be filled with love and kindness. Sentient beings be well. May all sentient beings be peaceful and at ease. May all sentient beings be happy. May all sentient beings be filled with love and kindness. May all sentient beings be well. May all sentient beings be peaceful and at ease. May all sentient beings be happy. May all sentient beings be filled with love and kindness. May all sentient beings be well. May all sentient beings be peaceful and at ease. May all sentient beings be happy. This concludes the Dhamma practice for this morning. Thank you all for a wonderful class. Peace. Yeah, one last announcement. There's just a few beds left for our fall retreat in a couple weeks, so if you're going, now's the time to sign up.